Well, hello, everybody, and we're so glad you're here to be a part of this week's study. And we're looking at transformed, what it means that being a follower of Jesus, how it actually changes our lives, and how we live those lives outside of the life of the institution of the church out in the world. And we're going to be talking this week about family, and I'm excited to have two of my buddies here, my colleagues, Rob Dulaney, who's been our director of youth ministry for 13 years now, which is about 12 years longer than most youth directors stay, and Julie Ellerbrock, who's been here almost as long. It just came a year after Rob, so 13 years as our director of children's ministry. So they know a lot about families. They have their own. So I want to start by just asking a question. I read in the Bible that line that says that every leader in the church should be a person who manages his own family well. That part of it, and for if he can't manage his own family, how could he manage the church? As Paul writes to Timothy, and I've that's always stung a little bit as a person, because I watch my own children and my own life of faith at home, and I'm not always super proud of it. I don't always feel like that's going right. Why do you think for people it can be so hard to practice their faith at home as opposed to when they're at church or someplace else? I'll start with you, Rob.
Yeah, I'd say that a couple different things. Number one, it can be easy. We tend to live very busy lives, and it's easy to put our faith in a not in a box, but in kind of a checkbox. That's the thing that I do.
Right.
That I go to church, but to permeate your family life, it's all the time. I think also we can feel like we are not equipped, that we need somebody who has been to seminary or somebody who knows more. We don't want to say the wrong thing, and then our child has a bad theology because of something we do wrong, and so then we don't start. And I think lastly, to be honest, our children see us at our worst, when we're tired and exhausted. And, and so it's easier when we're just coming into a Bible study and can do the thing for a short amount of time, but they really are part of our whole life. And so that can affect things as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What about you, Julie?
I agree with all of that. I think that one of the things that I like to talk to parents about, and not saying that I always did this as a parent, you always want those do-overs, right? But to think about the conversations that are easy in your home. Is it about school? Is it about a sport? Is it about an activity? Is it about what you're doing as a family? Anything. And then think about, why is faith conversation any harder than that? And then just begin bringing up Jesus in a conversation when you're out on a walk, or when you're in a car, or asking a question, or saying a discovery about, gosh, I really saw Jesus today at the grocery store when such and such happened, or some way that you can just bring him up. Look at the beautiful flowers that Jesus, created for us, and they're beautiful, and talk about that walk with him, and just figure out a way to just open it up. And then I think it gets easier and easier as we think about how we can do that. What's a way just to start today with one thing?
That's great. I think it's a little like, we say we want to equip the parents to be able to talk about it, but if we are waiting as parents until we have it all figured out, we're never going to get there. So
Right.
At some point you just have to start, and not be afraid to say, I don't know, if you don't know. My favorite is always, what do you think? When they would ask a question, so that we could go with that. I also think a lot of it is like, like you said, they sometimes see us at our worst, and we have this sense of, gosh, if I start talking about my faith, they'll see the hypocrisy in that. They'll see that I'm not that person, that I pretend to be someplace else, and so I don't want to pretend. And I think that just makes it hard when we're afraid to be vulnerable about our own failings in faith. I mean, maybe if you start there, that gets you down the road, if you start with the failings in the faith, other than that. Well, David Horton wrote the lesson, and he had a whole host of great habits, and I think that's kind of what you were saying, Julie, is you've just got to do it, right? Talk about your faith. But he had a host of great habits, and family prayer, and building a boundary between work and home, and Sabbath, and gratitude, and faith talk, which we've talked about, and others. What habits do you feel like have been easiest or most impactful in terms of building faith in your own family?
I think daily gratitude is a huge one. Having a gratitude jar, or some way, a time at the dinner table or before bedtime, to just talk about something that you're grateful for from today. And when you can write them down, though, and then go back and look at all of them, we started this practice in one of my Bible study groups several years ago, and some of the moms still keep it up, and they just write something down every day. And at the end of the year, they go through the whole jar. And it all of a sudden, especially coming, during this pandemic, all of a sudden you can see all these silver linings. A daily dose of gratitude goes a really long way in filling our spirits. And so I feel like that's something that you can do a lot. And I think the other thing for me is about forgiveness. I think that's the thing that over and over, as a parent, you just want to be transparent all the time, and just asking for forgiveness, and showing forgiveness in all that you do. I think that is something that goes a long way in teaching our children. And I know for my family that was big. And, again, I'm not, there are many fails along the way in that, but I do feel like forgiveness is a really big one. That is something that we can really show the image of Jesus when we share that with our family.
Oh, Rob, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think first at its core level, faith is caught as much as it is taught. And as much as we like to say that it's like the big, prepared family Devo time, I think it's in a lot of the small moments. And I reflect on my own upbringing, and I recently lost my mom. She died in October. But her faith was so powerful through service. And she always said that she just wanted to do a good thing for somebody every day. And she always said that faith was the most important thing. And she honestly wasn't the most, I never thought of her as like, the Bible study leader or, but she was just so steadfast in her service, and she pointed that service to God. And on the other end of things, I have my oldest brother. I'm 17 years younger than him. And he just went off the rails, like right around before I was born. When I was born, he was far away, but it was his story of coming back to God, and his embrace of the grace of God that, he was instrumental for me. Really impactful. And so just hearing his story, he would do things, he would do Bible studies, and he owned a surf and skate store. And so just watching and observing. I will say, on the concrete end of things, I did a thing at Princeton University, and they did a big study, and they said, evening prayers, that's old school, but that is one of the most determinative things towards lifelong faith, that you're praying together with your child. It was really convicting to me, because I tend to think of that maybe as a checkbox. But just that little rhythm,
every night when they're going
helpful.
to bed, go in and have a prayer, have them quote, say their prayers, right?
And statistically, they said that had a huge impact.
Wow.
More than a lot of other things.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is that. So your conversation about your brother brings up something, we've been talking a lot about parenting, faith in our family, but family is far more than just our children, right? So
Mhm.
we have our parents and our siblings, and then we have our family, you know, those friends that are so close to us that they're like family, and they see who we really are too, just like our those do. What have you discovered about conversations and experiences, maybe even conflicts, I don't know, with other family members outside of just, you know, you and your nuclear family, but the broader sense of family, and how faith is part of that. Rob.
I think sometimes, you know, thinking about my brother and just thinking about ministry, it's the people are surrounding your family, surrounding you are just so important. Often as a young person, you'll be receptive. You know, I could say something to my own child and that may not go through, but if somebody who they look up to that's a little bit closer to them in age, or a neighbor or an instructor says something, it'll resonate. And it's like, I've been saying that, but they you know, that having that surrounding. Karen, we always talk about at St. Luke's having that 5 to 1, you know, that every child, young person needs to have 5 adults that know them, they're invested in them. And again, you're catching that faith as much from those other experiences as you are. Looking at my own family history, you know, since mom died, I've been reading notes and stuff like that. And I've been so impacted by the influence of family members that had no children. My mom was really supported by 3 aunts. None of them had children. In our own family, we have a sister-in-law that is as much of a family member as anybody else, and she doesn't have children, but she is Tio and Tia for our kids, and hugely influential. So those are just so key.
Yeah. Julie?
Yeah. So when you first said that, I immediately thought of Grandma Gwen, who is not biologically a grandmother, but she lived next door to us when Taylor was born. We lived in Dallas at the time, and she had no children. And she just, you know, just took Taylor in as her own grandchild. And we moved back to Houston when Taylor was just a little over a year old. We wanted to be back by family. And Grandma Gwen stayed in Taylor's life until the day she died. And she would connect with her and send her cards and write her letters and send her gifts, you know, some of her favorite, you know, birthday presents we still have stored away today because they came from Grandma Gwen. And we were just talking the other day about the daffodils that lined her fence and our fence. We had a chain link fence between each other, and we had daffodils that grew there. And it's just that memory of this woman who just embraced her as her own. And it was such a lovely experience.
You know, the image of family in scripture is far more often about the family of the community of believers as family, and how we treat one another as family in the, you know, community of believers, than it is about our biological families. There's so much more in scripture about, you know, Jesus is his mother and brothers come to pull him out of the disciples, and he said, hey, these people are my family, right? So I think part of what we can do with our biological families is connect them with the family and the bigger family of believers and the community of the faithful. Well, thank you guys so much. And I am so grateful for the work you both do for our families at St. Luke's and the impact you all have made here. I'm so glad you couldn't find any other jobs that were any good, and so that you stuck around. And we have been so blessed to have you.